So that was Heidi Hanna. Had a great chat, and it's just for me anyway. It's really nice. She was my very first, like I said, live broadcast guest, and
Okay.
then to join here today for the first one with you here. It's kind of nice, a little chuffed about that to have people come back.
That was so funny. She saw me grab my phone, and you could tell she was being very polite, but the flash in the eyes was, is this guy really going to go onto his phone while we're talking? And I was like, no, I was bringing it over as a prop. I promise. I'm not on Instagram right now. Hey, guess who I'm talking to?
Well, she's read with a lot of that stuff, understanding how to talk with different people, and I'm not someone who likes a lot of phone calls, like I said, anymore. I used to, and I think you actually brought it up perfectly when you said all the telemarketers. When all of that started happening, just nonstop, you kind of give up after a while. And it's like, that's enough.
Hey, do you want to have an impromptu guest?
Yeah.
Let's have an impromptu guest.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the broadcast, Margaret Millett, who happened to be walking by, and we just grabbed her.
Yes.
Not literally, just figuratively.
Yeah, there's camera. I have proof I didn't touch anybody.
Yeah. We have it on multiple cameras.
Yeah.
You didn't touch anybody.
Well, gentlemen, it's great to be back with you talking about business continuity at the DRJ show.
Yeah, we talked to you at I won't mention the name, but
another conference,
another place.
Yeah,
it's great to have you. And you're speaking here too, aren't you?
Yes, I am. Yesterday, I spoke on the DRJ mentorship program, and then this afternoon, I'm going to be speaking on a panel discussion to talk about how to ask some of those tough questions to be prepared that your executives could be asking you.
What kind of tough questions? Let's ask the obvious one.
Oh, well, I'm going to say there's always,
without giving too much away.
It's a challenge to know what the tough questions are because I'm not a mind reader. But I think it's how to be forward thinking on what your program's going to need in order to continue to make value and also continue to ensure that your program's not a dinosaur and that it's really a 21st century program.
Well, that's a lot. I love it. But no, let's talk about that. It's nice and light to start off with. But yeah, I love that you mentioned the program that's a dinosaur, because a lot of times I have clients come to me and they say, hey, my stakeholders don't see value in what I'm doing. And I ask, well, what are you doing? And they're like, well, we're doing the same thing we did in 1994.
Right.
The world has changed just a little bit in the last 30 years. So your program
has to change
needs to change as well. But the interesting thing is a lot of people don't like change.
Which I find really hard to believe in our industry that you don't like change, because there's a lot of change that goes on in the business continuity management profession. We are always got to be looking at what's coming to you from the left to the right, from up above, down below, because shit happens every day.
Yes, it does.
Well, I love to swear on
Can
this
we
show.
say that? Can we say that?
Yeah, well, actually,
I've just said it. Sorry.
The sponsor of this hour we own, so we can actually.
Oh, I'm fine with it. Then.
Yeah, I won't fire you if you won't fire me, Alex. How about that?
Hopefully, I won't be excluded if we're coming back on a show again in the future.
No, it's exciting, but it does happen. It does happen.
About change, I find that, like you just said, change is constant. And considering what's going on in the world right now, Morocco.
Yes.
What's happening with Taiwan and things that keep happening in North Korea and. Oh God! The list goes on and on.
Wildfires in Canada.
Wildfires,
we got another hurricane coming up.
Change isn't something that's annual or you can measure over time anymore. Change is daily.
Right.
So yeah, people have to adapt to different kinds of changes.
Right. It's true. And I look at it as today is September 11th. Of course, it's 22 years since we had the tragedy of 9/11. And you think about how many people entered the profession due to that tragic event. Yeah. And I just look in the past 22 years, look at where the profession has gone and where it's evolving to and what the future direction looks like it's going to lead to.
No. Well, actually, let's ask that question. Where do you think it might be leading to?
I do think that because organizations are really trying to tighten their belts and looking at how they can gain efficiencies, I do think that you will see more of the organizational risk coming together of how we can bring people together. Because I look at many of the teams that you talk about that encompass organizational resiliency, they are very small teams. And we're never going to be the large finance, legal, HR teams that we really hope that we would get to be, especially since we touch the organization every day. I think that that's where you start to gain those efficiencies by bringing that together and also just trying to get somebody who has the experience to know how to ask the right questions of all these areas that are going to fall under that umbrella, have that forward looking look to make sure that the organization is going to continue to evolve and not be stale. And also just to ensure that whatever they're building is going to be the right fit for their people. Because I hear a lot about customers at this conference so far, but I always like to take a step back. You can't service your customers or produce product if you don't have employees. So I always start off with making sure that we got the employees to, make that widget, answer that phone call, whatever, because without them, you're not going to be able to continue to produce product, customer engagement, and make sure that the revenue is flowing in the door.
I'm hearing that more and more, that there's starting to become a greater focus on people over process. And for the longest time, it was process, and people was kind of a lip service thing. And now people are really starting to understand that, hey, it's people that is the secret ingredient here.
So I'm going to say this. I've been, next year, I'm entering my 30th year in this profession. And I can tell you that prior to 9/11, always people were looking at loss of the technology, the building, and the process. People were never assumed to be part of that equation. But 9/11 really then brought the people to the forefront of that formula. And therefore, I've always been, the people need to be there, because again, I also started my career off at a 1-800 customer service number. And if you don't have anybody to pick up the phone, you're not going to have happy customers, because that's also in the day when you did make a phone call, you only waited like 2 minutes. Now it's not like 30 minutes where it's like, let me go get a coffee. Thank God I got a headset.
With an unlimited menu.
Right. So that's where I do think that the people are really the starting point of having an excellent organization.
I think COVID helped with that too. When people all of a sudden, I've got COVID and I'm sick, or my child is sick, and suddenly they weren't available,
Right.
at a snap of a finger, literally.
Well, and the other thing that we have to take into account, Alex and James, is when COVID hit, they were always still worried. We didn't know at the beginning as to how many of the loss of lives were going to be. At first, they thought it was going to be much higher numbers. And that's when people were really looking at their continuity plans of how many people do process A. Oh, we only have 3. And now what happens if somebody is severely sick or passes away, or, just can't function because of, like you said, needs to take care of family or friends or something like that.
Yeah.
So we just had on Heidi Hanna, who was the keynote speaker this morning.
And I sat in on her session. She was awesome.
Yes, she was. And one of the things she was speaking to us about was things that maybe we had found unacceptable that have now become acceptable, or abnormal have now become normal. And the example we talked about was everyone expecting you to respond to a text or email or phone call within 15 seconds right now. So is there anything in our profession that you've seen like that maybe used to be as like an outlier or strange, and now it's just taken as this is how we do things?
I think you have to put boundaries on what you do or do not want to have as your norm. I mean, when I started to fund this profession, there were no cell phones, there were no laptops. So you pretty much were responding to things Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, when you physically walked into the office. And I'm going to say this, I've always worked in the IT department, but I think that technology in some ways hinders our ability to have normal lives. The fact that we are literally, real time, we're all doing this. I see it in the sessions right now, that you have to then state what your boundaries are, because otherwise you could be responding to emails, text messages, etc., morning, noon, and night. But I think that's also when you have to also be the role model for you and your teams. You need to say, hypothetically, if something's happening, I'm only going to do this on the weekend, and you don't need to respond unless I do something. Or if you do decide to work over the weekend, tee up those emails and start sending them off when you come online on Monday morning. Just because you want to get your inbox clean doesn't mean you need to be alarming your staff, because even though you can tell them, you don't need to respond, I'm just sending this out, but people will stop and start to respond because they're like, my boss is working, therefore I need to be working.
You start setting an expectation.
Correct.
Yeah. And I would think you would have to be especially mindful that you lead a large global team. So there's probably somebody, it's probably 9 a.m., I would think, always somewhere.
Right.
for a member of your team.
Well, and even if it's not your team, even the stakeholders. I mean, many of us here at DRJ do work for global organizations. So I could be sending out an email at 6 o'clock this evening, and yet it's 8 a.m. over there, or it's 1 a.m. someplace else. And you just want to let people know it's like, the world's not going to come to an end if you don't respond to a meeting invitation.
Yeah, I've quite a few times, and I'm sure it's happened to both of you. You'll get a note from someone. Did you see what I sent you last night?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I'm just logging in. Hold on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Alex has always been very good about that, of establishing boundaries. He will say, because I have no boundaries, let's just be honest. But Alex will say it's like Thursday afternoon. He's like, okay, I'm going to the cabin on Friday, so leave me alone for the next 3 days. He's much more polite about it because he's Canadian, but that's the gist of.
Well, I think it works both ways. It's also, being mindful of when you're sending out things. And then I think the other thing is if you are seeking a response back from somebody that you really need that response, I think it is building in to say, hey, can you get back to me by Friday, 3 o'clock my time, so that you know that they've read it, they've acknowledged it, that you need a response. And then if not, you can follow up with them on Monday morning because hopefully they've read that email.
Yeah. So how are you enjoying DRJ so far? I know it's kind of,
Well, I am really enjoying it. It's nice to be here back in Phoenix. It will be our last time. So I'm looking forward to doing this in Dallas next fall. And no, great to be here. It's great to see people. I always love coming to DRJ. I think, again, the nice thing is, again, I think this is like really one of the largest conferences I've been to post COVID. And so it's nice seeing some people that I haven't seen in a long time.
Yeah, it's nice to be back face to face with people again. I know it's happened a few times, but still, I guess you don't know how much you really missed those 2 years.
Yeah.
And not being able to see people and chat with them, or just go off to the side. Hey, how's it going? Or hey, whatever happened about that, thing you talked about 3 years ago?
Yeah, because I think the other thing is even though we've had business continuity conferences with DRJ since COVID, I think it's one of those also of people were restricted as to the travel. They needed to get the funding. So one thing I will tell your audience listeners is the process is probably getting underway at your organizations for the budget process for 2024. So make sure you get your ask in to attend one of the DRJ conferences next year.
Yeah, because we've actually seen DRJ has grown since their first post-COVID conference. And that is an anomaly in the conference space overall. What we found, a lot of companies got used to not spending any T&E money for 3 years. And so once you lose a line item in your budget, to get it back is very hard. But I think organizations are really shortchanging their employees if you only do online training, and there's tremendous value to online training and online learning and webinars, but the networking that you do in person, to me, makes you a stronger employee. Because the first time I went to a conference, I met someone like me, and then when I had a question about what to do with my job and my program, I could call that person. I haven't really found that level of networking in a virtual space.
I think the thing with the virtual is people are afraid to go ask a question, even though there's the availability on online chat. You can say, hey, ask questions, but very rarely will they. And I think that really where they're fairly much more comfortable asking questions. I mean, we've seen it here. We've all spoken at DRJ conferences, but more people will come up to you after the session and start to ask you something, or they'll reach out to you on LinkedIn saying, hey, I really liked what you talked about for your business impact analysis or whatever your topic was. And then they will start and what I'm going to basically say, start to peel back the onion on what they want to ask you.
Yeah. And that, it kind of circles back to what you said at the very beginning as well. If you like cutting budgets and things like that, well, then you're going to get stuck doing the same thing over and over again in your programs. You won't be moving forward because the people that should be learning how to do that, you're preventing from going to conferences like this.
And to your point, James, if you didn't use your money during COVID, you've lost it maybe, but also make sure your finance person doesn't go give you the budget number for your pre-COVID line item for training and development. Because unfortunately, one thing coming out of COVID, I think we can all experience, no matter where you are in the world, there's been an increase in the airline tickets,
just a little bit,
hotels, cost of food, transportation, ground transportation. So I think you need to give yourself a little bump up to cover what the actual cost will be.
Absolutely. I just purchased, my oldest son is in his first year at university. And I just purchased yesterday his plane ticket to come home for Thanksgiving. And I was like, I cannot believe this is how much a plane ticket now costs over Thanksgiving. Like, he's not in first class, as you get to fly the plane at this price. So certainly, to your point, if that line item has stayed flat, there needs to be some realistic adjustments.
Right.
So we're coming to the end of our first hour.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't realize you're going to be broadcasting that long so far today. Well,
Believe it or not. Yeah. Time flies when you have great company. Right?
Oh, well, that I've always agreed with you two on.
All right, Margaret. So if people want to connect with you or learn more about what you're doing with your program, or, BCI Women in Resilience, or any of the other things that you work on, what's the best way to
reach out to me on LinkedIn. I will get back to you, and always happy to help anybody who's got a question about any aspect of the program, their career, whatever. I'm here to pay it forward to people. So thank you very much, James and Alex, for having me on.
Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for stopping by. And Margaret really does get back to everybody.
She does.
I try. And I converse quite a bit.
And she's a planner, which I love. Last night she was telling me about her vacation next year, and I have my vacation planned next year.
Well,
so
you
I
didn't tell me about that.
I didn't want to steal your thunder, but I was like, oh, a fellow planner. It was very exciting.
All right, guys,
Thank
have a
you
great
so
rest
much,
of your time here at DRJ, and talk to you soon.
All right, thanks, Margaret.
Thank you. So we have come to the end of our first hour. We have to take about a 10-15 minute break and get set up for our next round of guests. James?
That's exciting. So this hour was sponsored by Speak and Spark, the Speaker Bureau Marketplace, connecting event leaders with speakers, trainers, and consultants in the cybersecurity, business continuity, DR, emergency management, and resilience field. Their mission at Speak and Spark is to connect audiences to experts, which sparks knowledge and fosters learning. So thank you, Speak and Spark.
So thank you, everyone at Speak and Spark. We're still trying to figure out which one of us is Speak and which one of us is Spark. But
it's kind of like Frick and Frack, or Tweedledee and Tweedledum, Mutt and Jeff.
So we will back in 10-15 minutes or so.
Sounds great. I'll be here.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you soon.
If you like that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.